The balance of powers between the world government, the four emperors, and the seven warlords of the sea is one of the most compelling political storylines in One Piece. But how would the world change if this balance of powers fell apart? In today's video, we'll take a look at what would happen if the four emperors united to take down the world government. Now, at first glance, it may seem like the Yonko are the logical choice to win this battle. The whole reason the world government lets them exist is because the emperors compete with each other to keep themselves in check. But let's dig a bit deeper and try to figure out if that's actually true, by comparing the forces that each of these parties have. Now, the Marines' most obvious strength is in their numbers. At Marineford, we saw over 100,000 elite officers assembled to oversee the execution of Portgas the Ace, meaning that their numbers far surpass even that. Now let's make a conservative estimate and guess that there are about 500,000 active officers serving in the Marines. If we compare this against the Straw Hat Grand Fleet, which has about 5,600 members, it seems that an all-out war won't go well for the four emperors. The Seven Warlords would be another thorn in their side, but for now, let's assume they'll stay out of the conflict between the world government and the four emperors. So that gives us two choices. Before I tell you about option 2, let's dive into the first plan, which is for the four emperors to gradually take over the world by capturing territory, instead of starting a direct war with the world government. We know that most of the villains in One Piece were pirates who seized control of nations by force, but what if the four emperors could unite entire countries to join their cause and fight the world government? Luffy and the Straw Hats have already made some progress with this, as Fishman Island and Wano Country are technically already their territories. Furthermore, nations such as Alabasta, Dressrosa, and Sakura also remain indebted to the Straw Hats for liberating them. While Buggy and Blackbeard wouldn't really be suited for this mission, I can imagine a world where Luffy's exuberance and Shank's charisma win over a bunch of kingdoms for the four emperors. Now, all of these kingdoms have their personal unique forces, with the Tsunegiri Guards, Tonta Corps, and Ammo Knights being a few variants we've already seen in the series. If the four emperors managed to get enough national militaries under their control and merge them with their extended fleets, they would create a fighting force that could rival the Marines in manpower. But the problem with this approach is that it alerts the world government to the pirates' plan pretty quickly, giving them time to prepare or strike down the operation altogether. And this brings us to the four emperors' second option for world domination, launching a full-blown attack on Pangaea Castle with all their might. Now, here's where things get really interesting, because attacking Marie Joie means the four emperors would be going straight into the Lion's Den. We're talking about the very heart of the world government power, where their most dangerous forces are concentrated. First, let's see how the four emperors' crews would fare against the regular Marines stationed at Marie Joie. We know that some Marines even have Devil Fruit abilities, meaning that they won't be pushovers by any means. However, the four emperors' fleets have been toughened by years of sailing the high seas, so the regular pirates probably would be able to overpower the Marines. But then let's talk about the Vice Admirals. These aren't your average Marine officers. We're looking at seasoned warriors who've climbed the ranks through decades of combat. The Vice Admirals include characters like Garp, who could go toe-to-toe with the Pirate King himself, but most of them would likely be much weaker. However, we can still expect them to have a certain degree of hockey mastery. It's likely that at least half a dozen Vice Admirals will be stationed at headquarters, so the four emperors would face an immediate wall of elite fighters the moment they set foot on Marie Joie. Normally, stronger crew members such as Galdino, Alvida, or Jinbei should be able to team up and take down the Vice Admirals. However, if stronger fighters like Garp or Tsuru are in the mix, they might hold up some of the stronger fighters. But the real main course comes in the form of the three admirals, because each admiral possesses devastating Devil Fruit powers that can reshape entire battlefields. Kizaru's lightspeed attacks, Fujidora's gravity manipulation, and Ryogoku's plant-based devastation represent some of the most destructive forces in the entire One Piece world. The admirals by definition must be able to hold their own against emperor-level threats, making them the most immediate danger to our united force. So who would engage the admirals? We're still not at a point where we can spare top-tier fighters, so Zoro, Crocodile, and Sanji will probably have to do their best and pray they'll be able to overcome the admirals. Fleet Admiral Akainu will probably remain stationed at Marine headquarters despite the attack, just in case it's a diversion. However, standing above even Akainu, we have Kong, the commander-in-chief of the world government's military forces. As someone who once held the position of Fleet Admiral, Kong's combat abilities likely exceed those of the current admirals. With his decades of experience, Kong would be the perfect field commander to coordinate the world government's defense on Marie Joie. Therefore, the four emperors would decide to leave Blackbeard behind to keep Kong busy, while they hunt down the elders. But here's where the four emperors' assault gets truly nightmarish: the Seraphim. These artificial beings are cutting-edge clones of current or former warlords and possess many of the warlords' powers, including observation and armament hockey. The 7 Seraphim that we know of are designed to take after Boa Hancock, Bartholomew Kuma, Mihawk, Jinbei, Crocodile, Doflamingo, and Gecko Moria. Each Seraphim possesses the combat abilities of these legendary pirates, while being completely loyal to the world government. Once again, it would take a powerful unit to hold them back, and Blackbeard's 10 Titanic captains might just fit the bill here. Despite them individually being less powerful than the Seraphim, the advantage in numbers may be enough to bridge the gap. But things get much worse when the God's Knights, the world government's most elite enforcement units, step into the fray. Led by Shank's twin brother, Commander Figurlin Shamrock, these mysterious warriors serve as the personal guard of the Celestial Dragons, and have authority that rivals even the Admirals. While we don't know the full extent of the God Knights' powers, the fact that they're considered the ultimate protectors of the Five Elders suggests they possess strength that surpasses that of even an Admiral. For this battle, the top fighters in the Four Emperors' forces will be forced to get involved, meaning that Luffy, Shanks, and Mihawk will be stuck fighting off the God's Knights. So by this point, the Four Emperors' troops are virtually all used up without even laying a finger on the Five Elders, the supposed highest authority of the world government. Recent revelations have shown us that these aren't just political figures sitting behind desks, they're ancient beings with combat abilities that dwarf most fighters in the series. Each elder possesses unique and terrifying powers that have been honed over centuries of existence, and we can only guess how the pirates would fare against such opponents. But even the Five Elders pale in comparison to the true ruler of the world government, Imu. This shadowy figure sits on the empty throne, and commands such respect that even the Five Elders bow before him. Imu's true power remains largely unknown, but given their position as the secret sovereign of the entire world, we can assume they possess abilities that surpass everyone else in the world government hierarchy. One example of Imu's power was shown in the anime, when he just swallowed up a fire attack from Sabo. The leader of the world government was unaffected by the attack, meaning that it takes a lot more to do any damage to him. So let's imagine how this assault would actually play out. The Four Emperors and their combined fleets approach Marie-Joie with everything they've got. The initial assault might catch the world government off guard, but that advantage wouldn't last long. The Vice Admirals would mobilize first, creating multiple fronts and stretching the pirates' resources. Then the Admirals enter the battlefield, draining the pirates' elite troops even further. Meanwhile, the Seraphim would be systematically dismantling the Four Emperors' fleets. These artificial beings don't tire, don't feel fear, and possess the combat instincts of legendary pirates. The supporting crews that the Emperors rely on would find themselves outmatched by relentless enemies. The God's Knights would likely target the most dangerous members of each Emperor's crew as well, and the Four Yonkos would find themselves increasingly isolated. And that's assuming the assault even reaches the Five Elders. These ancient beings have had centuries to prepare for threats against the world government. The biggest problem with taking on the Five Elders and Imu is that we know so little about them. These beings are supposedly immortal and stronger than even the toughest admirals, and no one knows their weaknesses. And then the final boss of this scenario would be Imu themselves. As the secret ruler who has maintained control over the world government for 8 centuries, Imu likely possesses power that exceeds anything we've seen before. When we crunch the numbers, the harsh reality is that even a united Four Emperors alliance would probably fail in a direct assault on Pangaea Castle. So with both our plans failing, the verdict seems conclusive. Given the current strengths of the Four Emperors, and based on what we know about the world government, the Yonkos are not ready to take over the world. And that brings us to the end of today's video. Do you think the Four Emperors would have stood a chance? As always, make sure to let us know your thoughts in the comments down below.